What I really want people to take away is to please know that in your lowest of lows, in the worst career or business or even personal setbacks that you are encountering, this is where the growth happens. And you will come through this again with all the resilience and mental flexibility and confidence to get you through whatever comes next. I don't glorify pain, but I want you to know that you will get through this.
I'm Melanie Barr. Welcome back to the She Built It podcast, your go-to place to empower you to live the life and business that you crave. I'm here to talk about everything from having the courage to make life and career leaps to the details of how to lead effectively, create successful teams, implement strategies for growth, and infuse tech innovation. I'm here to celebrate your wins and navigate through your challenges. I live in the city now, but I grew up in a town of 1,000 people. I've navigated major life leaps, a senior level corporate career, worked in professional sports, and now as a successful entrepreneur who loves business, technology, family, and making meaningful connections with you and the She Built It community. I also love a good workout and dose of self-care. Magic happens when we focus on the part of ourselves and our business that brings us joy. So turn up the audio, open your favorite notes app, grab your favorite drink, and here we go. Welcome back to the She Built It podcast. Thank you for joining us, Amy. You are a USA Today bestselling author, journalist, and marketing consultant who has worked with some of the world's largest brands, including Procter Gamble and Google, and you have just published your most recent book, The Setback Cycle. Tell us about your career background and what inspired you to write your book on overcoming setbacks and providing a framework for leaders.
I have been studying the habits of successful leaders for the past 20 or so years through my marketing career, my formal journalism training, and being an observer of the world. And through many of my articles, mostly for Forbes, Harvard Business Review, Fast Company, I noticed that as I was profiling some really fascinating folks, every single career journey story they would share with me always revealed a common theme. When they climbed out of their biggest setback, that's what led them to their most brilliant ideas and their most successful ventures. And I was like, why do I keep seeing this same sort of cycle happening over and over again? It's not always a mistake. It's not always an obstacle. It's not always a trauma, but it's something else. And I started to explore what this might be. And when I came upon the definition of a setback, which is a reversal or check in progress, I was like, that's it. Every story showed that they were working towards some original goal and they were unexpectedly bumped off that path. And when they had to reroute, get creative, they found somewhere newer and usually better than the original path they were on. And I found this really fascinating. And once I saw it, once I understood it, I kept seeing it everywhere. Once I started talking to people about it, everyone kept seeing this everywhere they looked in their own lives and the lives of others. So I started trying to see if there was a book written about it or a research paper or any literature about this phenomenon. And the only thing I found about like setbacks were in sports books. There was really nothing in the business world. Some books had touched on it, used the word here and there, but nobody had really explored this concept fully. And that's really what gave me the idea to start writing the book and putting together the research and figuring out which stories needed to illustrate the framework that I was in the midst of creating.
That's so interesting. And you're right, because when things are clicking along, we don't really question things. And when we go through a setback, we think, oh, this is the worst. Like, how am I going to come out of this? And you're right. That's when you question, you take the downtime a lot of times because you have no choice. And then the creative ideas come to life.
Exactly. And there's actually neuroscience to support this because I thought that too. Is this something that's universally understood? Is this just us loving drama? No, it is. When you experience a setback, your brain undergoes a dopamine dip, and we think of dopamine as a negative thing, but dopamine is really a plasticity inducer, which means it contributes to your brain's resilience and mental flexibility. So it's actually in those dips that lead to the transformation and the change. And like you said, it's the moment where when things aren't going well, you really have to pause and think about how you could improve, how you could change, how you could do better. The neuroscientist I interviewed was able to prove in her lab that people who have endured more setbacks are better at problem solving, reasoning, and maybe most importantly, they were good at recognizing when they were on the wrong track and they were able to course correct more easily. They didn't just keep trying to push something forward if it wasn't working. That might be the key to working through setbacks, knowing when to adapt, knowing when to pivot.
In your experience, what are some common setbacks that leaders face in their professional journeys?
There are so many different types of setbacks. Some of the most common are, frankly, the most obvious. So, a leader at an organization, generally a big setback for them would be a restructuring, a round of layoffs that impacts the morale and the burnout potential of their team. There are so many factors right now economically that are contributing to manager burnout, and leaders are really having to navigate new skills so that they can lead through these very tumultuous times, understanding and then working through the setback cycle, not only as an individual, but as a team, can be incredibly impactful. A lot of people make the mistake of thinking, okay, the team has been reshuffled. We have some new people. We have to get rid of some people. Let's just barge forward as we always have. But a setback is a moment to reevaluate and come up with new ways of working. It's a moment to get creative and rethink and decide, how can I take the really high performing members of my team and pair them with those who need a little extra support, and find out how we can merge people's passions with their strength to keep performance up, to keep morale up, and to start to get into a new groove, because the old dynamic of a team that looks totally different today than it did yesterday is going to require a whole different path forward. What got you here won't get you there. That's not only true as you work up the ladder in management, it's true in terms of a shape shifting and evolving team.
It's so true. And for some leaders, it's access to capital. Some are downsizing. Some are going through constant, I know for myself, tech evaluations. They're amazing platforms, but the larger your organization gets, the harder it is to implement those at times.
Exactly. And that's when you really need to draw on, again, that agility, the mental flexibility, the resilience that you've built up through all kinds of other setbacks, because if that's leading to your creativity and innovation, this is the time to apply that.
Walk us through the framework you've developed for working through the defining moments.
So there's 4 phases of the setback cycle. We call them the 4 E's. The first is establish, because unlike the more obvious setback, like the one I just described, so many of us unconsciously float into our own setback. How many people do you know who stayed in a job too long or stayed in a relationship too long? You move forward because of inertia, not by conscious choice. So establishing that you are in a setback and acknowledging the moment you're in is what's going to allow it to become a defining moment. If you ignore it, which a lot of us do, I've certainly done it. If you pretend everything is fine, I can get through this, you're not quite going to get to where you need to be, or it's just going to take you longer to get there. So once you've established you're in a setback, phase 2 is embrace. This is one of the toughest phases, because this is when you have to get uncomfortable. And as a society, we have been conditioned to avoid discomfort. But remember, it's the dopamine dips where the transformation happens. So if you can reframe your relationship with discomfort and use it to your advantage, and this really just means stopping to ask the question, why does this impact me so much? Why am I feeling a certain way? Why am I so stressed about this? Why am I obsessing over this one little thing? It's not necessarily this one circumstance I'm obsessing over. It's the impact it's having on me, on my family, on my team at work, on my colleagues. And the ripple effect of that stress is what's causing the setback. And if you can start to make connections and glean the information and understand the value of it, you can start to really work your way through understanding why you are in this moment, what you may have contributed to your setback, what others may have contributed to put you in this setback. And the more information you have, the better equipped you'll be to move to your next step. So now that you've gleaned all the information and you've embraced the setback, you can move to phase 3, which is my favorite phase, explore. Explore is where we get to start having a little bit of fun. It's a playful phase. We don't have to quite commit to the path forward yet. So this is just when we get to experiment. This is a place to find the intersection of your passion and your strength. You can find out what your superpowers are. You really start to lean on your community and ask for help. Asking for help is one of the most critical things you can do to work through a setback. When people get laid off, the first piece of advice is go do all the things you said you'd do one day. One day is today. Just because you recognize you're in a setback, it doesn't mean you have to totally blow up your life or abandon everything you've been working on. The explore phase can just be a tiptoe into other things. This is what will prevent us from getting our identities tied up in our full-time job. If you're an entrepreneur, it'll prevent your identity from getting tied up in the thing that you have been building. Like you should be doing other things. And I always say this to people, you don't have to be in a setback to go through the explore phase. If you are perpetually exploring, you will have a lifeline if the bigger thing you're focused on falls apart, if you get laid off, if an investor pulls out, if you have a tech setback. So the explore phase is a really important one and one that you can perpetually be in, whether you're in a setback or not. That's also going to give you a lot of clarity and information so that you can move to the fourth and final phase of the setback cycle, which is emerge. So the emerge phase can be really exhilarating because you've done all the introspection, you have the tools. Now it's time to decide what to build. But going from knowing to doing can be surprisingly complicated. Going through the setback cycle is energy intensive. So by the time you get to emerge, sometimes you're just tired, you're exhausted. So how do you propel yourself forward in that moment? Give yourself the space, take the rest, lay down, take the break, consider if there's any additional barriers you might be facing, and then give yourself the grace to step around them. And then when you're ready, you can take that step forward and know that your metamorphosis is complete and you can step into all you have become and you can have a real sense of all you can achieve.
I love the emerge stage. It's a fun stage to be in. You have to tell yourself, I'm going to hear no, but who cares? Because then you're also hearing yes. And that part's also really fun. It reminds me of a time when I was going through a career change and someone told me, I think you should run a marathon. And I thought, yeah, I don't know if I can do that. But putting in the training didn't feel great, but the end felt amazing. And it takes time. Just like thinking through a setback, I had to think through the training. I had to persevere through those moments. And at the end, when you cross the finish line, is the emerging.
You realize how much you're capable of. That's what you should remind yourself of the next time you're in a setback. Hey, I got through that. I can get through this. And in those low moments, it's really hard to see the silver lining or know that this will end up being a good thing. And you don't want to glorify the pain or any suffering or anything like that when you're in the low moments of a setback, but know that, again, you've done it before and you will once again emerge.
How can leaders effectively navigate challenges while maintaining a sense of purpose and direction?
Purpose is such an important part of not only leadership, but motivation, perseverance, and collaboration. When you are leading a team through anything, a project, a launch, just getting by day to day and dividing up the workload, if everyone on the team understands the larger mission of an organization and that larger purpose, they are much more likely to feel loyal, to feel engaged, to feel like they are part of something bigger than whatever work they have to do that day. When entrepreneurs are working towards whatever company they're building, they are always focused on that North Star, that mission. And that's what gets them through this. Let's go back to the discomfort that comes naturally with running a company, with overcoming obstacles. If you think back to grit theory, Angela Duckworth is a psychologist who came up with grit theory. And she talks about it's like purpose and motivation, like that is going to get you through anything. So if you're delegating, that's fine. And if you're giving some of the more junior members of your team smaller tasks, make sure they really understand the bigger picture and the impact that their work is having on pushing your company or your team or your client forward.
My husband and I manage assisted living facilities, and I always say they're not my grandparents or my parents or my children, but they are someone's. It's getting the team around that bigger mission of helping people have a better life.
Exactly. I know people who have a picture of their kids up by their desk, not so they can be reminded of their family in general, but so they can be reminded of what they're working for, what they're working towards. You want to build generational wealth. You want to make sure they can have the best life possible and the best resources possible. And again, that's what's going to get you through the 80% of work that's a little bit of a slog. You're not motivated to wake up one day and do invoicing and do accounting, but you have to do the invoicing and the accounting if you want to run a successful business. And that's when you have to really draw onto that larger purpose, that North Star. And I have a couple exercises in the book that can help you identify what that North Star is.
What do you hope readers and listeners will take away from your book and apply in their own leadership journey?
Everyone experiences setbacks. They are not fun in the moment you're experiencing them. And everyone experiences them differently, right? Your setback might look different than mine, but the cycle is the same. This is a universal human experience. And once you see setbacks through this lens or see your own life experience through this perspective, you will emerge from your next setback with a sense of all you can achieve, all you are capable of. What I really want people to take away is to please know that in your lowest of lows, in the worst career or business or even personal setbacks that you are encountering, this is where the growth happens. And you will come through this again with all the resilience and mental flexibility and confidence to get you through whatever comes next. I don't want to glorify pain, but I want you to know that you will get through this.
You're reminding me of a time in my life where I felt like I was at my lowest in my personal life, and I had just taken a new role in a company. And I thought, my life at the time is pretty low. I might as well go for this, right? I might as well try everything I can. And that turned out to be one of my best career moments because I put all I had into it because I thought, and I don't want to say it can't get any worse because it probably could have gotten worse. It turned into one of the best opportunities. So I love that you've created a book to help us think through this because you're right. In the moment, we don't always do it. So thank you for sharing Setback Cycle with the world. Please share how and where we can find you.
The setbackcycle.com is a website that goes right to my personal site and gives you a little more information about the book. I'm on Instagram at Amy Show, AMYSHO, and I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Threads and Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and my website, thesetbackcycle.com.
Thank you for joining us today. I'd love to hear from you. Reach out to me at hello@shebuiltit.com on our She Built It website or at She Built It on social. Thank you to my editor, Rich Streffolino, who always makes us sound good. Until next time, let nothing stop you from experiencing the life and business that you crave.